Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Well, welcome. Happy New Year to everybody. First C4 meeting of 2025. It's amazing that we're 25 years into, we made it through Y2K. We've made it through pandemics. We've made it through all sorts of fun things to be 25 years into a new millennia. I am Brian Hodson. I am the mayor of Canby and your C4 co-chair. And I enjoy this group very, very much. We always do a lot of fun things and talk about a lot of fun stuff. I was just reelected to my sixth two-year term as the mayor of Canby, and I must be a glutton for punishment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, we'll do introductions around the board here, and next on my screen is Mr. Gornick.
Hi, everyone. Paul Gornick. I'm a director at Oak Lodge Water Services.
Thank you, Paul. Mayor Kaiser.
Scott Kaiser, mayor of Molalla, going into my second term.
Excellent. John.
John Sarah, TriMet, Local Government Affairs.
Welcome, sir. Mayor Milch.
Michael Milch. I'm in the middle of my first four-year term as mayor of Gladstone. I say first term, probably my old term, but thank you.
Commissioner Savis.
Hello, everyone. Paul Savis, Clackamas County Commissioner. I too enjoy this group of people. I know that's going to change, and perhaps Councilor Sherman can tell us more about that when he's introduced.
So you meaning that your feelings about this group and how much you enjoy it is going to change, or
no?
Okay, I wanted to make sure
that this group will change, unfortunately. But I'm also looking at it with optimism as well. So
all right, perfect. Mr. Hilliard.
Yes, Mark Hilliard, representing the Hamlet of Beaver Creek here, and I do enjoy this. I haven't said much because I'm learning all about this group, and it's amazing.
Well, Mark, just so that you know, we are all learning, and those of us that like to talk a lot just means, what is it? If you don't want to confirm that you're not very smart, then don't talk. So you're doing just fine. Mr. Marl.
Good evening, everyone. Adam Marl, Oregon City Commissioner. It's nice to be back. It's been a few months because I was actually taking the Metro and PSU Regional Traffic and Transportation class, which was being offered on the same night, and that has now concluded, and I am thrilled to be back with you all.
Excellent. Perfect. Miss Pratt.
Hi, Valerie Pratt, 12th City Council, and I just got reelected for 4 more years.
Congratulations. Mr. Sherman.
Good evening, Brett Sherman, City Councilor of the lovely city of Happy Valley. I am midway through my third 4-year term, and as Commissioner Savis alluded to, I am not long for C4. We shuffled the deck a little bit in the city of Happy Valley. We have a new council president and some individuals that are very excited about being engaged in some of the various committees around the region. And so Council President Josh Callahan will be potentially coming and joining C4 going forward, and also C4 Metro Subcommittee. And then our new councilor, Glenn Wachter, will be taking over as the alternate for C4. So I will very much miss all of you. This has been a really enjoyable part of my life for a long time. I, of course, will still dial in remotely and check it out. I just won't be on the screen with all of you. So, but I'm sure, surprisingly enough, we will all see each other at many, many events around the region. But it's from an ego perspective, it's hard to walk away from this stuff because I love being in the know with you guys.
So, Brett, when does that, is that for take effect for the next, in February?
Do we have a process for that? I mean, theoretically, it could be the next meeting. Yes.
Yeah, I think I'll let Jamie address that here in a little bit, but yeah, I think our February or our March meeting tends to be the one where everybody gets introduced that's new to from the C4 person and then the alternate. So, we'll work out those details here coming up. So, Brett, you've been a huge addition to this group, and you will be missed for sure. So, coach up these guys coming on, will you? Get them up to speed.
Absolutely. And I will miss all of you as well. And I have very much enjoyed being part of this group. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner West.
Good evening, colleagues. Ben West, Clackamas County Commissioner. And I don't like you guys so much, but no, I'm just kidding. Everyone was very effusive and kind. No, you guys are all great. I love spending time with you guys. I've learned a lot. I'm halfway through my first term, and I learned a lot from this group. And so it's been great to learn from Commissioner Savas and here, and then be a part of this. And so, yeah, I look forward to potentially do this moving forward and participating in the way that I can.
Perfect. Then Mr. Anderson.
Hello, Will Anderson here, a city councilor in Milwaukee. I'm a little over a year into my first term there and excited to be back here for another 4 years or however long they let me stay.
Perfect. Welcome. Mr. Wilson.
Hi there, Trent Wilson, county staff here at Clackamas County, here with Jamie to meet the needs of C4 and help you be successful and productive.
Excellent. And I saw Metro Commissioner Lewis bouncing in and out. So when she comes back, we'll put her on the spot. Okay, I think we have a quorum to take care of some of our housekeeping pieces. Jamie, we're good?
Yes, we should have a quorum.
Okay, so we'll take a motion to approve the minutes for the November 7th C4 meeting.
So moved.
I have a movement. Is there a second movement? Okay, I have a second. Any questions or discussion? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. Next on the agenda looks like the approval of the TPAC nomination. Jamie, do you want to fill us in on that?
Yeah. By way of background, the Clackamas cities have one seat on the Metro Transportation Policy Alternatives Committee, or TPAC, which is a staff level group that provides technical support to JPAC, Metro's Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation. In late October, the TPAC seat representing Clackamas cities was vacated, but before Metro will recognize a replacement, this body, C4, must issue a nomination. Provided on page 6 of tonight's packet are proposed changes to the TPAC roster, which was affirmed by the C4 Metro Subcommittee on December 18th.
Okay, thank you for that, Jamie. Are there any questions or is there comments about those that were looking at the nomination piece at all? Okay.
I move to approve the TPAC nomination.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second on approval of the TPAC nominations. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Anyone opposed? All right, that passes as well. Next, here under housekeeping, we have the C4 2025 meeting schedule. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We meet usually the first Thursday of the month. Obviously, January was a little bit of a snafu with the holiday falling on a Wednesday, so appreciate everyone's flexibility. Next year, I think the New Year's Day is actually the first Thursday, so we will meet the second Thursday there in January, but there you have the schedule. Any thoughts, comments on that at all, or are we moving on? Okay, we're moving on.
Just really quick, I don't know how many people are going to show up on July 3rd.
No, that is true. Thank you for that. Valerie, appreciate that. Yeah, so generally the executive committee will talk about that usually about May whether or not we want to hold that meeting or not. And so, yeah, so we'll stay tuned. We'll call that a tentative meeting. How's that? Perfect. Let's see. Then we have the C4 2025 appointments. Jamie, what do we got on that one?
Yeah, C4 is a very active body. At a minimum, we ask that cities resubmit the names of their elected C4 representative and alternate each odd numbered year, and 2025 is an odd numbered year. This cycle, we're requesting that appointments be made before the March 6th meeting, which allows enough time for new members to receive packet materials and reach out to county staff with any questions. Nothing, however, precludes that changeover from happening sooner if that's what your council decides to do. To facilitate the changeover, we just ask that the mayor or your city manager email me with the contact information of your new members, and instructions for how to do that are provided on page 8 of the packet. This information was also emailed directly to all of the mayors and city managers ahead of this meeting so that they are aware. I've also been tracking some of your city council meetings, so I know some of you have already started this process. Thank you.
Great, perfect. So, Brett, now you know. So, if you guys want to swap it out here, beginning of February, that's totally your guys' call. Which leads into the next and last bullet point under housekeeping. It looks like our March meeting will be in person, just for that purpose of meeting all new appointed C4 voting members and alternates, and dinner will be provided. So mark your calendar for that. I think there'll be discussion on whether or not we are starting maybe a tad early for that. I think the executive committee will have that conversation, but more to come on that. So that'll be fun. Great. Moving into supporting houses services reform discussion. And it looks like Commissioner West is going to be leading us in that conversation today. Commissioner West, the floor is yours, sir.
Mayor, can I jump in real fast?
Sure can.
Yeah, before Commissioner West gets started on this topic, I want to just quickly go back to the appointments and how C4 works and ask the question about the timing. And also related to this topic of SHS when we get to it, Mayor Buck has indicated that he's got a slight conflict, but he'll be here late and he hopes to be part of this conversation as well. So I'll go back to my question. On the appointments, the timing of and how we're all appointed. So the exec committee is appointed by the body of this group. And there's a particular strategy and method in which we do that. So I believe that the cities choose the city rep, which is Mayor Hodson for is that how it works, Mayor?
Well, it is, but I'm not the cities. I'm the rural cities.
Right. Rural. So there's a rural city rep, and urban city rep, and each subgroup of C4, the rural cities select that person. And then the executive committee, I believe, chooses who's going to be the co-chairs. Is that correct, Mayor Hodson?
That is correct.
Okay. So you may all recall how you got appointed to C4, but I believe it starts off with a letter from your jurisdiction stating who your primary and who your alternate is. And so I believe this is the year in which we renew all of that. So is that correct, Jamie, Trent? For all the positions, the special districts elect the water people and the fire folks. So the fire group of people will select their fire representatives. The water will select the water. The wastewater will select the wastewater. And so on. So that's how we're organized. And so that's all time for March 6th. Is that correct, Jimmy?
For a selection of the executive committee?
Well, for all those appointments, or is it due this year? That's my question.
We have staggered appointment schedules where cities do it on odd number years, and I think the not cities do it on even numbered years.
Okay. So this being an odd year would be the city's. I thought that the exec committee was done in one fell swoop. I can't remember if that was an odd year or an even year. Maybe it is staggered as well on the exec committee piece.
I will consult the bylaws.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
So back to the subject of Mayor Buck. Are you asking Commissioner Savas to hold off on the SHS conversation here, or?
Well, I was wondering maybe if we could take some of the items from the tail end of the agenda, get them over with so we can have a robust discussion. I know Mayor Buck and Commissioner West have been heavily engaged with one another. So I think you would support that, Commissioner West?
I totally support it and would love to have Mayor Buck here when I present.
Okay. Well, then why don't we'll shuffle the deck here and throw everybody a curveball, and we'll start, maybe take care of some of this bottom items. All those in favor of adjourning? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Updates and other business. Do we have a JPAC impact update from December?
I guess I will do that. I'm the only one on JPAC that is, Councilor Sherman is the alternate. So Mayor Buck and I are the primaries on that. And then Councilor Lewis is one of the Metro councilors that sits on JPAC. And so the discussion has been, was in December around the RUFA conversation with regards to what we may or may not bond and the feasibility of bonding in the current market, and the projects. So there was a review of the projects applications for this RUFA process. There's a step one and a step two. The step one are typically larger sums of dollars, which have been in the past bonded, and have also been typically transit related projects. So there's 3 categories this year. And one of those categories is the largest category is for transit. And there are several projects that are listed there. There's more discussion of that coming in January, the January JPAC meeting. So we'll keep you apprised. That's primarily what the major part of the discussion has been. Is there anyone, Councilor Sherman, do you have any other inputs to that?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay.
So sorry, so for me, who is not in JPAC area, can you please enlighten me on what RUFA is?
Regional Flexible Funds is what the acronym stands for. And it's it doesn't, I forgot what the cycle is, how often it comes around, but the bonding part, the step one does not come around that often. And step two are smaller projects, which do not have typically a bonding element to them, and are broader than just transit typically. So we would get trails, the bridge between Gladstone and Oregon City, the one when we approved it way back many years ago before the bridge fell down, was an example of that. Some sidewalks in Happy Valley along 122nd up there. I went 129th. That was one of the projects. So they're typically sidewalks, multimodal type investments, but not always.
Okay.
That's my JPAC update.
All right. Anybody from MPAC want to give an update?
Oh, MPAC, we had a very robust conversation, a presentation from President Lynn Peterson on supplemental housing. Is it SHS funding that was part of that, as part of that housing funding update? A very robust conversation. And I'm guessing that Commissioner Savas or Commissioner West would love to weigh in on kind of the general tenor of that conversation. Yeah, and then also we had an update on the Montgomery Park Title IV map update. That's the alteration of the industrial zoning for that area to accommodate more residential, commercial, and the extension of the trolley in that area. And I think Portland has ultimately approved that. I think that did go through. So yeah, that's I'll let the housing conversation kind of go for now. We can pick that one up during our conversation today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Miss Lorenzini.
And did I hear there's about to be a new MPAC chair?
I will be I will be taking over as MPAC chair this year. So I hope and expect to work closely with all of you to craft, this is recorded, right? To craft the future agenda for MPAC and to push Clackamas County priorities and considerations as part of that overarching conversation that we have with Metro. We did have our steering committee meeting today, and you know, one of the main priorities that actually the Metro councilors agreed with is making impact more of a bi-directional conversation, providing opportunities for the region to bring topics and concerns up to that level versus just having it be Metro pushing things down at that level. So I look forward to working with you to help make sure that we are addressing issues that are pertinent to our county and to our region. Thank you, Ms. Lorenzini.
Congratulations.
Yeah, Brett, that's great. And Miss Lorenzini did plug into the chat box the guidelines for March's C4 elections for the executive committee. So it does sound like urban and rural cities will congregate separately to determine who those people are to the executive committee, and then the executive committee will choose chair and co-chairs at their meetings. So, okay, still no Mayor Buck. So we're going to call on Mr. Wilson to talk to us about transit updates and next steps.
You got it. So, my commitment to you is that we are keeping your conversations alive as you have them at C4, even if they take a long time. And by a long time, I mean years. And transit is one of those topics that it's a slow moving policy topic, even though the buses run on time. So here's what my commitment is to you. About a year ago, C4 embarked on a conversation around STIF funding. That's State Transportation Improvement Fund. Those are dollars that go to all your transit agencies by formula. And then there's other conversations that happen around more focused uses of those funds. And the more focused use of the funding discussion that you had about a year ago was around regional coordination funding, which is funding that comes out of TriMet's allocation and then is distributed to the PTSPs or small providers within Clackamas County. And so about a year ago, there was discussion from the PTSPs where they provided details on other or alternative ways that some of those dollars could be used to enhance some of that funding that could be distributed to small providers. And then that was followed by a conversation that was led by TriMet's leadership, Tom Mills, I think, who shared details about how STIF funding is used presently by TriMet and how it's distributed and the process by which they coordinate with the small providers and how small providers can apply for those dollars. At that time, that sparked a conversation that between TriMet and the PTSPs on, is there a better way to do this that creates some predictability of funding between the PTSPs and TriMet? And that was I'm going to call it a negotiation, but it was really more of a discussion and some back and forth that happened between those groups up until about the middle of June. They did not quite land the plane on an agreement. And at about that time, it was getting to the point where the Joint Committee on Transportation was starting to do their tour. There was some interest, I think, to sort of figure out what the Joint Committee on Transportation was trying to accomplish for the transportation package, and we'll talk about that next, and what the PTSPs and TriMet wanted to do with these dollars. But it was ultimately reaching a bit of a standstill between, at the staff level anyway, what the future was going to be for those dollars, if there was going to be a way to smooth that process between the groups. After the Joint Committee on Transportation met at Happy Valley at the end of September, there were a couple of comments by some of the PTSPs about, a desire to smooth that process even more. And so that turned into more of a policy level conversation between Commissioner Savis and TriMet leadership. And they've been meeting since that time and sharing some additional ideas back and forth about ways to improve that. The next iteration of those discussions actually happening next week. And so I don't really have a permanent update here that there's a final solution to that process. But what I wanted to share with you is that conversation, having started here at C4, is still ongoing between at least Commissioner Savas and TriMet leadership. Commissioner Savas is there with Andy from Sandy Area Metro, or SAM, or the Sandy Transit Group. And she's there representing sort of the technical expertise of the PTSPs. Commissioner Savas is there representing more of a policy level perspective of the small providers. TriMet's there, who also represents Clackamas County, sort of as the owner of these funds, and trying to figure out with the leadership there how to distribute these dollars. So that is an update on how the last year has been going, specifically around those regional coordination funds. But I know that this group loves transit conversations. And so wanted to take an opportunity to just also highlight a few of the many other things that are going on with transit right now that are worth being aware of, and tee up at the end of that a chance for y'all to give staff a little bit of direction about what it is you want to tackle as it relates to transit, specifically within this group, so that we, Jamie and I, know what to bring back to you over the coming months at your meetings, so that you can start to tackle these different policy issues. So at the top of the line there is, here comes a transportation package here in the upcoming legislative session. And a top priority for the Oregon Transit Association, OTA, is to increase the amount of STIF, State Transportation Improvement Fund. I think that is like a penny of every dollar that you earn out of your employer if you work within a transit district. And so that comes out of your paycheck. And that is, if I understand correctly, John, you can correct me on that amount, but it's like a 0.01% of what you make. And so the objective of the OTA is to try to increase that by 5. And I don't know if that's an aspirational target or just a needed target, but that is the target that they've set. And so that is a number that you'll hear during the legislative session, to try to increase transit funding during the transportation package through that mechanism in particular. So that is a big conversation that will be going on overall. And then again, within STIF, there's other dollars that could be populated here within our agendas moving forward. The other thing that is worth knowing is that later this year, not right now, but later this year, the county is due to make some updates to our countywide transit development plan, which includes partnerships with all of our PTSPs, transit providers, small transit providers, and we work with TriMet on that too, to create, more robust vision or understanding of what our transit development plan looks like, where there are gaps, where there are needs moving forward. TriMet's here, so they can help me with this a little bit, but TriMet is still continuing to implement Forward Together 1.0, and there are still like work to do in that. So they're moving through that process and expanding those services as the plan laid out. But also as they're moving through that, they're starting to vision cast for what 2.0 could be, and that's down the road. There's not like a date certain on when that could be, but it wouldn't be surprising if we started to hear TriMet start to talk about that as a future upcoming thing, maybe at the end of this year, early next year, but not right now, is my point. TriMet's also working on FX planning, which is, broader bus rapid transit planning. And then, of course, Metro at this C4 Metro subcommittee has been talking about the connector study that they've been advocating for, which is more like shuttle service between where the bigger lines are, which is something that C4 has talked about quite a bit, how to do these shuttle services. So Metro is studying that. That's not a TriMet thing. That's not a small provider thing. That's specifically a policy level discussion at Metro. And then, of course, here more locally is that TriMet is working with Happy Valley on a service boundary expansion into where the parts of Happy Valley that they continue to grow into that are now outside of the TriMet boundary. And so that is additional, ongoing happenings around transit that's going on. So that's just like a quick breath at the ecosystem of transit happenings right now. Some of it's money related, some of it's policy and service related, some of it's just boundary and specific details that are being worked out. I know that at large, C4 has had a variety of ideas, questions, and even feelings about service provision, gaps, how many providers live and exist within Clackamas County, and how many people live between those different services. And so there's a lot of questions and conversations we could have at C4 around transit. And I think the intent here of this update was maybe to even get us started to have some next conversations about it. But being the holidays, being a challenge to get people together to talk about what it is we could bring you that is tangible, we wanted to first bring you an update about the conversation that started here a year ago at C4 around the STIF regional coordination funds, but then also lay out these other happenings so that y'all had some awareness of those things. We believe, of course, in no surprises, and then invite you to talk about where do you as C4, as sort of a policy coordination body, want to work together to try to find some sort of objective or solution or goal that y'all can sort of move towards that brings or bridges or builds the transit capacity here within Clackamas County for your constituents. So that's my update. That's my invitation to listen to what you want us to bring back to you, and I'll start doing that listening.
Great. Trent, thank you so much for that. And Mayor Milch has got a question.
Just to go back to one of the money related things that you said, you mentioned the transit payroll tax, 1 cent per dollar, and you said they wanted to increase that by 5. Did you mean by a factor of 5? So it would be 5 cents per dollar?
Yep.
Pretty significant.
Do you mind if I clarify that, Trent?
Please do.
Yeah, so the STIF tax is actually 1/10 of 1%. And the OTA ask would be, yes, to multiply that 1/10 of 1% by 5. But that would be a stepped increase over the next 10 years. And I believe it would increase by 1/10 of a percent each biennium in every 2 years for that time period. And also, this is the OTA ask. I wouldn't expect necessarily that is where this ends up, but that is what the request is.
Thank you for that important clarification.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just to give a little bit of C4 perspective and the history of C4 and our role in transit. So we have a urban transit seat that's non-voting, and that is represented, at least elected right now, by their representative is John Sarah. So John, thank you for being here. I have a lot of respect for you. So, sometimes these conversations get a little challenging, so don't hesitate to jump in, please. We really value you. We appreciate your presence here tonight. Then we have a rural seat, and that's represented by, I believe, Todd at Canby Transit. So I think he's the rep. He's not with us tonight, and then we have the PTSPs are the smaller providers, and in general, the employers historically, prior to HB 2017, the payroll tax was paid by the employer, and those dollars were presumed to be spent where the employer is to get people to work, and not so much where the employee lived. So that in itself really created a lot of hardship for the suburban rural areas, which is mostly housing and less employers, right? So they don't get as much of those dollars. So that was the somewhat of a reasoning as to why so much of unincorporated Clackamas County, incorporated Clackamas County as well, and same goes with Washington County. So, and as Washington County's employment grew, their base grew, they had a higher need and demand and had a lot of funds, like Intel and some of the big employers, Nike out there. They certainly deserved a lot more transit and needed that. So when HB 2017 passed, this was about where the employee was being taxed, and where ideally, where the employee lived, we would be providing transit. So all of those employees out of their payrolls being paid this new tax, this STIF tax, it's not going to happen overnight, but ideally, everyone who pays has access to transit. Access to transit is somewhat defined by a 1/4 mile walking distance from where people live. Just rough back of the napkin staff, we've done at Clackamas County with our GIS people. A very conservative number of how many people are not served by transit in Clackamas County is about 170,000 people. It's actually greater, because we actually haven't done the exactly walking distant math. We just did as a crow flies kind of analysis with GIS. So it's probably more than that. That said, a number of us were really excited when the STIF money happened because we could actually provide transit in what we called our transit deserts. There is frankly, whether it's shuttles or however it's done, we have a great desire for more transit. What was highlighted about transit was the tolling conversation. And I think a lot of legislators and out of the area people who said, well, who cares about those Clackamas County people? They can just take transit, or they can ride their bike, or they can use multimodal options. But what we all learned was there are no of those options along that corridor. So it really put the onus on a number of us to say, hey, we've got to really step up our game, because the only practical means to move people that many miles down that corridor is transit. So that really put a lot of pressure and heat on us. So now we are facing ODOT, the state, facing this funding crisis. In 2025, we'll have a large transportation package, we presume, and this increase. So thank you, Trent. I think you introduced everything very, very well there. And then the other aspect of C4 somewhat was when I first became a commissioner 14 years ago. Wow. The boring Happy Valley-ish Damascus area was attempting to withdraw from TriMet because they were not receiving any service. And that's how really Sandy Transit got, and Malala and Canby and Smart Wilsonville, they all created their own transit service because they weren't getting any. So they wanted to provide that. So but unfortunately, when Boring, Damascus, and that area unincorporated pulled out, and they were granted a withdrawal from the TriMet district because they weren't getting any service, they didn't create anything in that area. So there was nothing to replace it. So as I always say, there was no there. All that said, now we have a slightly larger transit deserts or areas. And as Trent said, Happy Valley is entertaining how to expand service in their area. I know that mayors of West Lynn and mayors past present of Lake Oswego and all those cities have wanted to address this and get more transit. And apparently those stiff dollars are not going far enough. And the regional coordination conversation is something that we're hoping to get a bigger slice of the pie, so that there's regional balance when it comes to transportation, which we currently don't have. So years back, C4 set up a subcommittee with our transit providers to come up with ideas on how to better coordinate amongst themselves and connect people from Malala to Oregon City and to Canby. And they've done a great job. Now they've really gone off on their own, and they are meeting like almost every week, every Wednesday, I believe. And they're doing a great job on coordinating. So kudos to them. I wish there were more of them tonight. I would applaud them and recognize all of them for their work they're doing in coordinating. And John, you've been part of that conversation, so I want to pass some kudos off to you and your predecessor at TriMet. So it's a group effort. What in my conversations, and I'm asking anyone here tonight, Mayor Buck, and Brett and others, please jump in. But I think we want to move the ball, and I think there seems to be a growing concern or interest, curiosity. If we were to expand transit somehow, how would we do that? If we decided to do it on, if West Lynn wanted to do transit their own, how would they do that? Could we coordinate? What could we do? Is there some way that we could generate a system or the funds or maybe merging services or doing something? What are all the options to expand transit more aggressively to break out of the current mold we're in? Because we are not obviously going to get a big increase in transit. So I would like to basically with support of you all, if we get there tonight, just quickly, without not spending a whole lot of time, but direct staff maybe I want to say staff, direct the transit providers and their staff, because they are staff, to maybe explore all those options and bring those back to C4 for conversation in the future. So that's my proposal for next steps, let them help determine and what they think next steps are practical for them to serve to serve greater transit coverage in Clackamas County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to take a quick second and address some of those comments, Commissioner Salvis. And as always, I deeply appreciate all of your thoughts about how we can work together to make transit better in Clackamas County. I know transit is a huge priority for you all here in Clackamas County. I know sometimes we joke that other people, assume that you guys don't want transit. I know that that's not the case. We at TriMet know that's not the case. So we do want to work with you to address that. A couple of specific points that I did want to address. You and Trent both mentioned some of the negotiations that we've been having, trying to come to a compromise that makes regional coordination funding more predictable for our smaller PTSPs in the area and just work better for everybody. One of the ways that we are hoping that we can do that with you all is locking in a percentage of that money that's coming to Clackamas County. If we are locking in a percentage, that means that as the STIF grows, so does the appropriate amount of money that's coming to Clackamas. So, if it goes up by 1/10 of 1%, if that's all we get, that's doubling what Clackamas County is getting based on the level of funding that we've locked in at that time. So there are some ways that we want to work with you all within this existing format to do some of these things that you're saying. And even a small change in this program would be transformational to Clackamas County, I think. So we want to keep working with you on that. The other thing that I wanted to clarify is, I've heard you say the folks that aren't served in Clackamas County by transit. I think you said 170,000. I also did a little bit of math on that, and there's so many ways that you can define this. Our numbers aren't going to match up, and I don't know exactly what methods y'all are using. But I pulled numbers for how many people in Clackamas County are more than a half a mile away from a bus stop. Countywide, I could find about 170,000 people who are more than half a mile from a bus stop. But looking only within TriMet Service District, that number is more like 58,000. And as expressed as a percentage of the Clackamas County population that's living within the TriMet district, that's about 18% of the population in the TriMet district in Clackamas County. That is a significant number. We want to address that. We want to get those people transit. But I just want to be clear on how many people are in the urban transit zone in Clackamas County and how many of those folks are living outside the TriMet district. Looking at that number, I mean, that's an even lower number as a percentage than we're seeing in Washington County right now. So again, these are things we want to address. These are things we want to work with you on. And that's one of the reasons why we are looking at the STIF as a way that we can do that. So we want to keep working with you and this entire group on that. So just wanted to clarify those points. Happy to address any other issues you guys have tonight or bring them back to our team and come back with answers later. So appreciate you all.
Thanks, John. Mayor Buck, you have your hand up, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Sorry for the delay. We have our little annual gathering of our board and commission members tonight, and where they're kind of sharing their aspirations for the year ahead and just providing general community input. And this, it's very topical. This is like an ongoing conversation, and we've talked about this over the year, but just the and Commissioner Savas touched on this, and we recognize TriMet has made some good improvements, in our area to the fixed route services. John, we're like a great partner, and we love working with you guys. But it's like we recognize that fixed route isn't the solution. Everywhere we have like aging population, they're not like going downtown to work. There's a lot of people that aren't going downtown to work. In fact, there's a lot more people like working out here just in their own communities. In a community like mine, I mean, a lot of people are working from home. And there's an aging population, right? So I constantly, community members, why can't we have a fixed route? Why can't we have shuttle service, a city shuttle service, And we do this somewhat ourselves as a city, but we don't have the funds to like fund an entire service, right? So we have a couple vehicles, and it's call based and on demand, but that's something we like to expand. And I think if we're going to be asking people to, pay more from this stiff, I mean, we just have to expand like this definition of transit. It just can't be this fixed route stuff or this inner city stuff. We've got to be able to help communities fund accessible ways for for members of the community to get around town. And so that's kind of been, we've talked about this before, but I would hope that, or I would ask that Clackamas add that to our kind of advocacy list, that we expand the definition of transit to enable stiff funds to be able to be, granted, or however it is, to return to these communities. Because you got to think, in the TriMet district, you've got all these employers. We understand it. Fixed route is challenging in certain areas, but I'm an employer. We're paying the tax, right? And it's not cheap. It's not cheap. And my employees can't use the service. Okay, fine. That's how taxes work, right? Sometimes you pay and someone else gets it. But we can't be, everyone's paying, employers are paying that tax, employees are paying the stiff tax, and we're not getting any really of it coming back. And I mean, that is not going to sit well with people who aren't served, communities that really aren't served to the same degree that others are. And some of that's because of density, some of that's because of geography and whatnot. So I think that expanding this use would allow communities to kind of customize the transit, expanded definition of transit, to better meet the needs of their communities, to get people around in their town in a more sustainable way, especially as all of our communities have had to eliminate parking, mandates as well. We're looking for these expanded uses that fit in with the state priorities as well. So thank you.
John, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to address one thing that Mayor Buck just mentioned, and that is with fixed route service, folks are also eligible within a boundary. I forget what the exact boundary line is, but within a boundary of that fixed route service for Lyft service, which is our paratransit service. And I know that that's not a one-to-one. I'm not trying to argue that that is something that's available to everyone, but I just do want to be clear that those folks who do have mobility needs or are older do have access to that service, and that is based on where our fixed route service is. So when we put a line in that didn't exist before, that's a whole new group of people that have that very important service available to them. And I know it's not a one-to-one. I'm just being clear that that is also something that is provided as part of that.
Yeah. So thank you, Mayor Buck. I think you did, and John, for your input. The other thing I forgot to mention was that over the 20 some odd years C4 has been in existence, from the beginning, this, a number of topics come up, and transit's been one of them. So we have been clamoring for all different kinds of things. I can tell you at my community, the first transit committee I sat on 25 years ago in the Oak Grove area. John, you live just a couple blocks from where I live, so we're both Oak Grove people. We've been clamoring for over 25 years for a local shuttle. Just for the exact same reasons Mayor Buck just expressed. Because of our topography, and we have these. You have the 99 corridor, you have the 43 corridor, you have all these corridors, but if people can't get to the corridor because of it's too hilly or whatnot, or it's too far away, it's just not practical. That's why a shuttle service is great. And I've been on tours in Canby with Cat, and they have a great service. Wilsonville has a great service. So I think a lot of us are envious of that. So I just think the ask here tonight is, do you all support maybe either getting our transit subcommittee of C4 back together to work on this a little bit and come up with ideas and options how we expand, and if so, maybe someone could move to do just that, and let them come back and answer those questions for us. So we are doing a service study, so you all know, so we can get to those points that John was making about the 170,000 people and access to figure out where they are. I think having something firm, solid, and validated would be good. We need to have good, solid information. Right now, we just don't really have that. But if y'all support that, Mayor Buck, if you want to make a motion to get that started, that'd be great.
I would love to, yes. Move that C4 reconvene the transit subcommittee.
Okay. I'll second that. Or Councilor Sherman seconds that.
Please.
Okay.
We have a first and second. Any other discussion or question? Yes, Mr. Wilson.
So, having run a few subcommittees for C4 in the past, I think I would just like some clarification on to do what, so that we can maximize the time of those individuals who will serve on this subcommittee and help you accomplish a steady goal. And if we just need the subcommittee to meet to identify like what they need to work on, that is clear direction too. But it would help us help you be successful if we know what we are setting on this agenda.
Yeah, I think the message there, and help me with this, Trent, but I believe it's about maybe exploring options to more aggressively expand transit service in Clackamas County, both urban and rural.
Okay.
Do you feel that's adequate?
It's a good start.
Okay, great. And again, their guidance and their expertise would be valuable, and TriMet's part of that group, obviously, so they can help guide that conversation, help be part of that conversation. So,
Well, I don't want to, but maybe instead of saying transit, we say public transportation, since transit seems to have a very particular definition.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner.
Fair enough. Mayor Hodson, back to you.
Well, I was just going to ask so we have a first and a second, clarified some pieces there for Mr. Wilson and Ms. Lorenzini. All those in favor?
All right.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, looks like staff has some direction to bring back to C4 here in the future. Okay, perfect. To catch you up, Mayor Buck, we welcome you. And we shuffled the agenda here a little bit. And so we are going to come back and circle back to the supportive housing services reform discussion. It sounds like it's going to be the Commissioner West Mayor Buck show. So I will turn it over to you, gentlemen. The floor is yours.
I like how we're both laughing. Here we go. There will be jazz hands and everything for you guys.
Counting on it.
I'll just give a quick recap. Not that long ago, the metro area passed the Metro Affordable Housing Bond. That was a $652.8 million general bond obligation on property taxes. And then that went for capital spending to deal with the housing crisis in the metro area. Also, around that time frame, the 2020 Regional Supportive Housing Service Measure passed. We call it SHS. We talked about it a lot in here. That was to provide rental assistance, to prevent homelessness, to bring wraparound services, and to do more human services with that funding. It was an income tax on high income earners. It was also a business tax on marginal income taxes. It was set still to sunset, I believe, in 30 or 31. It is implemented by Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas County. Metro is kind of overseeing it, is administrating it, and is the oversight over the region of this. And there's been a lot of discussions over the last 13 months, with various stakeholders, all the counties, cities. Mayor Buck has represented many of the cities' thoughts and interests. Clackamas, Washington, Multnomah County have been at the table. Portland business, and it has had a voice. Here together with different service providers have been at the table. A lot of conversation is, what do we do right now? And do we do some overhaul? Do we go to the voters? Do we change the tax rate? And so there's been a lot of discussion around this, and not a lot of agreement necessarily from everybody. Earlier, I saw this week's a blur a little bit, but Tuesday, was it Tuesday, Mayor? When did you guys have your meeting? It's Tuesday, right? Tuesday. So Mayor, they swore in their new electeds in Lake Oswego, but Christine Lewis, who represents that portion of Clackamas County from Metro Councilor Lewis, she came and presented. She gave a presentation to the city council, and the city council had various comments and thoughts around that. And so I guess, where are we now after that recap? What's going on now? This week, Clackamas County provided the Board of County Commissioners. I signed it, and the Board of County Commissioners submitted a letter about where we're at. I had been in some conversations, and not too long ago, the chairs got together and submitted some type of proposal. There was still some disjointedness about what we should do. The city said supported something similar to the letter that we just submitted. The letter was to try to find some common ground on where we were at. Initially, Clackamas County was legal on any tax reduction at all. We got to continue to go hard and be successful, and we got to get this job done, and we have to have a sense of urgency. Was kind of our mantra. The cities were very similar to us. Clackamas County has been a little bit unique in how it's handled it and engaged its cities. We're one of the 3 counties that initially, through our recovery-oriented system of care, realized that we have to engage stakeholders in a way that was really collaborative, that tailored funds directly to people who need it the most. We believe local government impacts people's lives the most. So we said, let's get to local government partners and get them an opportunity to get grant funding. We allowed the cities in the metro area in Clackamas County to get creative. They know what Wilsonville, Lake Oswego, Westland, Gladstone, you all know what your constituents need. So we allowed you to create some programs and partner with us. We funded those programs through the SHS dollars. The SHS dollars in the metro area have benefited Molalla, Sandy, Canby, all of the rural cities in Clackamas County, because it frees up other funds and allows us to leverage them to the rural areas. Another rural part of Clackamas County seeing an investment because of the SHS dollars. And I mean, I'm not just tooting my own horn, but metro cities and the region is recognizing that Clackamas County is far more successful than the rest of the region in this. It's also my opinion that we're a little bit, some of these changes that have to happen is because not other counties or part of the regions have been nearly successful or competent. And because of that, we're seeing potential mass changes to the SHS funding, which could drastically in a catastrophic way impact the services that we are providing, the people we have got off, that we be able to house and get into services and get into recovery. So we have the letter, it just went out. We are going to, it's in the packet. So you guys have it in the packet. This is a letter that was sent to Metro, approved by the Board of County Commissioners. Metro also, when I talked to Lynn Peterson, she says, you know, you were right, Commissioner West, we don't truly have a guiding principle about like what we're really doing. Like it's not clear what our framework is. And I said, we have one in Clackamas. I said, here it is. It's our recovery-oriented system of care. So she's like, will you please include that, Commissioner? I said, absolutely. So it's in your packet along with the letter because that's what we sent to Metro. Metro is holding a regional stakeholder table tomorrow morning. Chair Roberts will be there with me for about an hour, but I'll be there representing Clackamas County for the entire meeting. We'll be working together on this. And we want to discuss, they're trying to get us to discuss the draft ballot measure language. We don't have any specific materials or language at this time. What we are interested in, if we have to start making reforms or moving forward, is in this letter. And I think that you should know where Clackamas is on this. We talk about our successes in the letter. We talk about what a recovery-oriented system of care is and why it's part of our solution, how we make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. And this is our response to the resolution. The letter takes, if you look at the letter in your packet, there's bulleted like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are topics that are in the resolution from Metro, and then this is our response to those topics. We want to have a more expandable use of the dollars that allows us to be more creative. So that it hasn't been as creative. That's been one of the issues with the original tax measure. And so we want to see it expanded to where we can actually be more creative for recovery systems, treatment, and different things that people need to build out an entire care continuum. That's what number 1 deals with. Number 2 is we talk about the extension of the supported housing service tax. Now, we were told when this passed that we'd get a lot of funding, we would go really hard, and we would solve homelessness or get our hands wrapped around it in 10 years. Metro's 3-ish years into this, and there's like, well, can we have another 20? That additional 20 is billions and billions of dollars of additional taxes. I don't know. I think it's, Adam, is it $3 billion additional dollars in taxes over that 20 years?
It'd be
$3 billion to 10.
It'd be 8 billion.
It's 8 billion. Okay, it's 8 billion, and it's billions. And it would take but at the same time, they're saying Metro is trying to do a 10 to 15% in that range. There's kind of different discussions of a reduction on the tax rate. Big business is saying we want a reduction on the tax rate. We're being killed by taxes. NGOs say we want this to last forever because we get paid through this, and so we'd like this to go on in perpetuity. This is where we get that 20-year extension. And so right now, the Board of County Commissioners' opinion is that it's too premature to increase to extend another 20 years. We need to adopt key performances and measures and successes that we are measurable, we can be accountable to before we can really consider extending it another 20 years. And the polling is really bad right now to this specific issue. The polling that Metro just did is not, the public is not there. The 3 counties aren't there. And from what Joe Buck has also told me is, I don't think the cities are there either. Last night when Metro came and presented, and on Tuesday when Metro came and presented before Lake Oswego, one of the telling lines when this topic came up was, well, the polling is weird because usually the more we tell people about all the great things we're doing, the more excited they are, and our polling goes up. And I quote you from Metro, the more you know about this, the less you like it. Joe, I'm not, because you were there, Joe, like you were there. And, but that was also Metro's reason for wanting to put it on the ballot, because I'm actually quite not sure. Am I wrong, Joe? Like
I know that it was like, if it keeps going on, more people will hate it.
They'll hate it. So they'll hate it less. There's not as many people that hate it now, but it's going to exponentially get worse. So before it gets even worse, you can try it now.
Yes.
And I'm like, the logic's a little.
Put that on the flyer, you know.
Yeah. But they did say, and I quote, with a straight face, the more you get to know about this ballot initiative that we want to do to change SAS, the more you know about it, the less you like it. That's what the polling says. And that is with not regional agreement at all at the table. So currently, we think if it catastrophically fails at the ballot box, like it's like a 70-30, 60-40 like failure, that is a really black eye, and that's detrimental to the overall health and success of the future need. Now it's clear, the Board of County Commissioners wants this funding to go forward. We want to be successful. We don't want a cliff. We don't want any of those things, but we also believe that this is premature to ask for the voters to pay this tax for another 20 years. They're calling it a tax reduction. It's a tax reduction in the rate, but it is not a reduction in the overall taxes an individual will pay over time. Adam I don't know if you can speak to also the rate issue. Clackamas County initially is like, we want no rate reduction because it was really catastrophic to our programming that we are just getting up and running. We felt the rug was being pulled out from under us a little bit. Adam and his team put together this fantastic chart that showed really how detrimental the proposal was from Metro if that funding if we did see a reduction in that rate. And I didn't know, and Adam, I don't know if you could take a second to just talk about the rate issue that Metro's proposing. And I don't know if you have the chart handy. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you could even jump in and talk about that and the impact of services.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner West, and good evening, everybody. Adam Brown here. Lots of familiar faces. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Deputy Director of our Health, Housing, and Human Services Department, and I've largely overseen in partnership with our staff the build out of our supportive housing services system. So I do have the visual that Commissioner West referenced, and it looks like I have share screen privileges. So I'll go ahead and give this a shot. Oh, Jamie, request coming your way for privileges. All right, there we go. All right, so I'll do my best to explain this as clearly as I can. So bear with me because I do think it's a very helpful visual. So you all know that we've been working really hard to build this new homeless services system funded by the SHS measure, and it's taken time. These are programs and services that you can't build overnight. And so what you see here on the left side of the screen is our actual spending for the first 2 whole years of the measure, fiscal years 22-23 and fiscal years 23-24. And then going into the future, the bars are our program budget for the SHS funds before we received Metro's last forecast. And I'll explain that here in a second. So for 24-25, that's our adopted budget. And then into the future, that was our projected expenses based on the programs that we had built. So the task that we undertook was in relying on Metro's revenue forecasts, we projected into the future the size of a continuum of services that we could sustain on an ongoing basis with that ongoing revenue. So the red line here up top is Metro's revenue forecast for 2023 that we received in November 2023. So you can see that we built our 24-25 budget in alignment with the revenue forecast, and we saw that as the full build out of our system. And so then going into the future, our budget just increases slightly in alignment with that revenue forecast. The colors on the bars are important too. So the yellow is our administration. The dark blue is our permanent supportive housing programs, and the light blue is all of our other programs. So we talk about a balanced continuum of services, right? So what does that mean? That means outreach and engagement to meet people where they are on the streets. It means shelter, so short-term safety off the streets options to get people inside, help them stabilize. It means rapid rehousing placements for folks who are ready to transition to an apartment. And then it means permanent supportive housing. Like the goal of our SHS measure is to provide long-term housing stability to households that have struggled with chronic homelessness. So when we talk about a balanced system that we've built those front-end programs, outreach, shelter, rapid rehousing, but we've balanced them by more substantial investments in what actually ends homelessness, which is permanent housing opportunities. So you can see that system reflected in how we've allocated our resources. So again, the dark blue bar retains this laser focus on ending homelessness. This is our investments in those long-term permanent supportive housing opportunities. The light blue bar is everything else. And I'll talk about why this is really important here in a minute. So again, 22-23, that's our actual expenses. 23-24, actual expenses. 24-25, that's our current year budget. And then the rest of the bars are our budget projected into the future. The red line, again, was Metro's 2023 forecast. The green line that you see here is Metro's updated forecast. So what we've heard from Metro, the forecasts have swung pretty dramatically, unfortunately. So originally their forecasts were pretty conservative, and then in November 2023, we got a forecast that said, hey, we're going to get way more revenue. The tax base, they said, we think the tax base is way bigger than we thought. And we always knew there was going to be some uncertainty in the amount of revenue that came in, right? We've implemented a new tax. It always takes a few years before you have enough data to fully understand your tax base. So in the meantime, the counties have kind of been managing this revenue volatility. Now we just got a new forecast in December, and that new forecast is about a 14% reduction from the prior forecast. So the challenge now is that we built our system to the red line, and now we're being told, well, the tax base isn't quite as big as we thought. The tax base is sort of much closer to these original revenue estimates than this bigger tax base that we thought it was. And that was based on 21, 22 tax data, which now we think is an anomaly. So we think that overall, we've kind of rebased this thing, and we think the base is smaller going forward. So this kind of butts up against one of Metro's primary narratives in measure reform, which is we have more money than we originally thought we were going to. That, it turns out, isn't really true. So, all right, I'm going to try to be brief with the rest of this. But so the point is, Clackamas County already in this fiscal year is facing a really significant challenge because Metro said in the current year, Clackamas County expects to get $10 million less than it thought it was going to. So instead of getting around 75 million, we're actually going to get 65 million. We think we're okay this fiscal year because it was the last year of our program ramp up. But we're going to have to take program reductions next fiscal year because we cannot sustain this level of service that we built into the future. So we're working on managing that now, and we'll bring forward some recommendations to our board about what that's going to look like going forward. So Commissioner West said, Metro put forward some scenarios. Metro scenarios that we got in November are reflected here in A1 and A2. Okay, that was Metro reducing the tax and redirecting some of the resources for affordable housing development and also setting aside money for the cities. So when the counties came to those tables and said, whoa, hang on, we're going to have really hard choices to make here because we've already built our budgets consistent with the revenue forecast. That was our job, right? We've had tons of public pressure to build these programs. So Metro came to us with scenarios A1 and A2 and said, counties, what do you think? And we said, well, Clackamas County brought this visual and said, here's what we think. We think in A1 and A2, we would barely be able to sustain just permanent supportive housing and have to forego all other services. That's not what we would do if we were forced to take reductions. We would preserve a balanced system, but the visual was intended to show that the scenarios create some really hard choices that we haven't adequately discussed together. And so that is kind of the spirit that the county showed up with. Is like, look, we understand we need to tune the dials. Our job is to work together to tune the dials, but we need to be eyes wide open about the hard choices that we're going to have to make as part of this public policy discussion. There's been a lot of magical thinking, and the magical thinking is that we can do more with less. So we've just tried to bring some sobriety to those conversations and say, look, we'll let the policymakers decide what we do here, but as staff, we want to alert you to the paradox. And so we want to be honest about those choices that we're making. So hopefully that was helpful. Sorry if it's kind of a long-winded explanation, but I think the context is really important here.
Thank you, Adam. The rate decrease that Metro is proposing with the business community in Portland, we could still do some supportive housing, but you can't heal someone's life without four walls and granite countertops. You have to provide the resources necessary to allow that person to get the skills, the sobriety, the recovery that they need to be a member of the community again in a way that's productive and build that personal capital back up in their life. And you can't, like, housing is important, correct? It's all part of the care continuum, but it can't be housing alone. And Metro would be forcing us to be a housing only entity and not actually providing the services necessary that fill out an entire care continuum. It would be an incredibly unbalanced system, and it to be a system that be forced us to not adhere to a recovery-oriented system of care, and that's key to our overall success. Sorry, I'm still in my office and all the lights are going on and off. But yeah, so I don't know, should I take questions now or should I finish up really quick? I just have some questions. I'll finish up really quick and then I'll take your guys'.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. Okay. Sorry, it got dark in here all of a sudden in the office. One thing that's been a bright kind of like I alluded to it earlier is that the relationship that the Clackamas County had foresight to do. It was myself had an idea working with the staff saying, hey, how can we really work with our local partners? Adam was a big part of that. Vahid, myself, and the prior board. But we kind of want to lead this idea about engaging the cities. And Metro wants to do that. because it has worked really, really well. I'm sure Joe could speak to it. I know he did the other night. And we're really proud of that. And that's something that we've only done, the other counties haven't done, but I think it would be beneficial if it is replicatable in our model. So we talk more about that in the letter. Establish a new regional housing and homelessness oversight structure. This oversight structure right now is completely ineffective and not serious, to be honest with you. And literally the first 45 minutes of every meeting is like, it's like chewing on razor. It's just bad. It's not good. It's not effective. And we want to make sure that the ultimate deciders that are on the oversight are elected officials that are accountable to the voters. Right now, Metro wants to propose that they bring in NGOs and all these other stakeholders to also have a vote, but they're not accountable to the voters. So these millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars that are being spent, the electeds truly are the ones that need to be the main oversight. And so we shift and we want to talk about how it should be electeds that are providing that oversight. The others can provide technical expertise, maybe provide strategy to us or give us input as stakeholders, but ultimately the decision falls on the electeds and the accountability is on us. We originally, the Board of County Commissioners was like no decrease. We committed to this, the voters committed to this, no decrease. We did say if certain significant benchmarks are made that are transparent and verifiable, then we may consider a 5% decrease to try to be at the negotiating table. But that is with a caveat. We're not just for a blatant decrease. We're for transparency. We need to have the data. Right now, Metro is not providing good data. They're not providing good statistics. They're not providing good insight on where these figures and numbers for decreases are necessarily coming from. But we would want that to be part of the agreement. And then we want a conservative approach. We've done that in Clackamas County. We can weather some of this because unlike the other two counties, we got a lot of heat for this. Adam will tell you right off the gate, media here together, other stakeholder informed, like, why isn't Clackamas County spending its money? Well, Metro wasn't being honest or forthright or clear about how much money we would get. We were pressured to spend money we didn't have yet. The Board of County Commissioners, Paul Savas could tell you this under his leadership and the previous board. We're like, we're not spending money. We're not trusting you. We have no idea how much money we're going to get. Well, it turns out we were right. We have Adam helped us be conservative with how we got our money and how we would allocate it out. And we do have some reserves, and we've been able to maybe weather this for a little bit, like Adam said. And then my last thing I'll add to this is because the story has been Clackamas County and the city is galvanized as one unit being effective. My ask is that the mayors in Clackamas County would step up and support us. We have some timelines coming up on the timeline for the way this is going to work. Metro holds a work session on the 16th. Metro will likely hold 2 public hearings on the draft ordinance to maybe refer this to the voters on the 23rd and the 30th. My ask to you guys as colleagues and friends on this that work well with this is either your cities or you as mayors come together with a letter, or you send something simple in support of the county letter and help us together push back against Metro's current proposal to put this on the ballot as they are currently suggesting to do so. But I believe that we have a strong voice. I would like your help in opposing that. I don't know. I'm willing to take any questions you guys have, and Joe, feel free to jump in, and Adam with questions that you have.
All right, Mayor Milch, question, go.
Commissioner West, you referenced that perception that counties got more money and weren't spending it. You talk about the issue. Adam spoke about doing less with more or doing more with less money. I want to ask about that white area in between the bars at the bottom of the graph and the red line at the top for the last 2 years, because looking at this graph, it looks like there was $70 million in revenue and less than 20 million spent. And then this past year, or the current year, 65 million in revenue and about 40 million spent. So are we looking at $75 million in excess unspent revenue that's in reserves? And how will that be used if the scenario changes as far as funding?
Adam, I'll have you, I don't have the graph in front of you. Adam, can you jump in on that?
Yeah, Mayor Milch, wonderful question. And so I like to split this conversation into 2 worlds. There's the anticipated amount of ongoing funding that we're going to get, and then there's the one-time funding that's accumulated as we've ramped up our programs. So you're right. We have accumulated a balance of funds as we ramped up the programs. The structural deficit I was talking to you about is the ongoing system that we've built. So what have we done with that one-time money that accumulated? We've capitalized our contingencies and reserves, knowing that we have a volatile revenue source that could swing 20, 30% in any given year, right? That's the nature of the tax base. So it's really important we capitalize those reserves. And then our board approved a spend down plan for the remaining balance. And that spend down plan made investments in one-time and limited term things like our built infrastructure. So we're building a stabilization center in Milwaukee. We're building a resource center in Oregon City. We're building a new village out in Clackamas. We are investing in the recovery campus in Clackamas as well. So we've taken those one-time dollars and we've tried to make strategic capital investments in the built infrastructure that Clackamas County's never had, the infrastructure that we need to deliver services. That's a really good use of one-time dollars. We've also made limited term investments in programs like short-term rent assistance. For example, coming out of COVID, we had a lot of one-time dollars from the state and federal government. We've continued additional investments in short-term rent assistance to try to prevent households from entering homelessness. We've also invested in pilot programs to kind of assess, where can we make strategic investments in things like self-sufficiency programs to help people, once we get people into our PSH, really providing them the supportive services that they need to eventually move off of our programs. So we can circulate out our spend down plan. It really clearly articulates the investments that our board has approved. There were 3 sessions that we did with our board, one in June of 2023, one in September of 2023, and then the last one in December of 2024. So we've updated this plan as the one-time balance has evolved each year as our expenditures close and the final revenue collections come in.
Well, I think including some of those capital expenditures in your graphs of programs would help alleviate some of that impression that the money wasn't used. You definitely have plans for it, and I think, as you've described, you're using it in very effective and with good foresight. So, thank you.
And maybe Paul, you'll speak to this too, but Mayor Melch, there was just early on too, we did not know, we got wide. This is right before I was on the commission, but we were told by Metro, you're going to get 14,000. No, it's 24,000. No, just take a loan. We don't know. And the Board of County Commissioners like, we're not going to just take a loan we don't know. Washington County will only spend money they didn't have in the bank. And we were chastised in the media. The special interest groups came for us. We were told we were horrible. And now looking hindsight's 2020, and we were like the most stably funded one with the best systems and the best outcomes because we took that conservative approach earlier on. That's a little bit, but then there's also that issue which you see where our capital funding is going too. So it's kind of 2 different, how are you spending your money kind of conversations. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so thank you. And thank you both, and Adam, thank you for that graph. I have a comment and then I have a question probably for Adam. And so my comment is, and Ben just touched on it a little bit. When this initial proposal was put out, it was done hastily. I think it was done for the right reasons, right? I think the housing crisis, the homeless crisis on the street, that's a humane issue. Definitely need resources to solve that. So I think the Metro measure was done with good purpose in mind. However, how they did it and what revenue stream they chose was not very a wise choice. If you follow payroll in the state of Oregon, or you follow payroll in the metro region over 15 years or 20 years, you will see that it's crazy. During the recession, there was a tremendous drop in payroll. So when there's a recession, not only does it affect people not having jobs, but more people are likely to become homeless because they won't be able to pay their rents because they just lost their job. So when you need the resources the most in an upcoming recession, you'll have less, which is backwards. So it's not the best funding stream. That said, we are where we are. And the other thing we asked for early on, and I'm analytical, so I asked for, hey, when the revenue started flowing, because they realized, if you all recall, that they didn't notify all the taxing authorities and all the people that, by the way, you need to take out, subtract your withdrawals from your employee. So there was a lot of uncollected funds. So when the funds started to roll and the word got out and the taxpayers and all the tax accountants were finally collecting the money, I asked them, please figure out what of that revenue stream is back taxes and what revenue stream is the actual employee base. It was possible to do that. They didn't. They lumped it all together. So they took all of that money and assumed that that was going to be the red line that basically Adam displayed. So they didn't approach this very analytically, unfortunately, and that's why they're all over the map. And the original projections were probably the most accurate, as Ben and Adam stated. So here's my question to Adam. Adam, you added that green line on the graph, and you based the dashed lines A1 and A2 based on the red line. But it sounds like if they go with Metro's proposal, you need to recalibrate that to the green line. So it's even a bigger cut than what you saw. Is that correct?
Yeah, Commissioner, I think that's fair. And that's a conversation we haven't had with Metro yet, because we haven't got updated scenarios since the new forecast. And I pushed for that a little bit in December, just to, say, hey, if we're having serious conversations about these reduction scenarios, let's recalibrate it to this new forecast. We haven't had that yet. Okay.
And then my question to both Ben and or Mayor Buck or Brett Sherman, who's heard this at MPAC. The other mathematical thing that's really not displayed here is that Metro was talking about taking part of that revenue stream you saw and diverting that away from those services to build housing, which would even be less revenue for the services. So is that still on the table? That's my question. And there's no mathematical justification or explanation or analysis by Metro on this proposal. They're just shooting numbers out in space, right? So my concern is that not only do you need to calibrate it to the green line, but there's another line that is still undefined, and that is how much they divert away for sticks and bricks. And that's my concern. My concern is they're not responsibly and mathematically analyzing the what and why of the cut.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think you're totally right, Commissioner Savas, on that. Does anyone want to take a stab at his question?
Well, I can, Commissioner, they're going to come out with their first draft, of this ordinance. And now the feedback they've received is don't divert money, from the counties. Now, everyone, the counties and the mayors, that have been advocating at the table have said, yes, we want the uses to be expanded. Everyone wants more flexibility in the use, so that if down the road there's years that there's excess collections, that money can be set aside to be used to buy land, to produce housing if wanted. But we want the plans to stay with the counties. We do not want Metro siphoning off. In fact, the money Metro's already siphoning off needs to be looked at in regards to the admin fees. Because, as the increase has been more than expected, so have their admin fees. But, a lot of that is a kind of fixed based cost. It doesn't cost more to collect, a higher amount of money. So that's a big question. Where is that money going? But yeah, it's unclear. I guess we'll know how much Metro has listened to the feedback they've received when they come out with this draft proposal. But our message has been clear. The money should continue. All the money should continue, aside from these admin fees, should continue going to the counties, but the uses should be expanded.
We ask in our letter for Metro's about 5% admin fee, and they're taking a lot of the money, and their reserves are crazy too. And so we ask for 2.5% admin fee instead of 5 in our letter is where they come.
I'd like to, Mayor Hodson, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, we've got 15 minutes left of our evening here, and two more questions about that, and then we still have to talk about our state legislative updates and whatnot. And so I want to make sure I don't run you guys too much past 8:30. So any further questions or comments, I need like brevity, please. So Adam, go ahead and finish your comment.
I was just going to say that the notion of expanding the uses to include affordable housing development is not controversial. Make that an allowable use, but let the counties have the discretion to decide when and how those investments are made, because doing that blindly is super problematic. We cannot indefinitely build affordable housing units because we won't have the service dollars that we need to sustain them. And the current scheme for affordable housing development is really expensive. We pay $500,000 per unit in capital costs, and then we still subsidize the rent. We can voucher people in the community for cheaper than we can place them in a bond built affordable housing unit. So it's just, yeah. So we want the ability to do it when it makes sense, but we don't want to be bound to some arbitrary thing that is not a good financial decision.
Thank you, Adam. I wholeheartedly agree on the voucher piece being a lot cheaper and whatnot to get done. Valerie, sorry, Councilor Pratt, go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to be quick.
Thank you.
Your discussions, the one thing that's occurred to me is that this, 125 grand, you pay above the 125 grand if you're single, 250 married, but that's really decent money now. But like even at 3% in 10 years, you're only going to have 75% of your spending power. So if you're doing this over 20 years or forever, at some point you're going to have like a single parent with a couple of kids that's going to be qualifying for aid and having to pay this tax. Was there any thought to adjust that for COLAs or MFI?
So that is one thing that has been considered. They refer to it as indexing the tax rate, indexing the rate to inflation. So you're right, as people's income increases, that you have more and more people being pushed into this tax bracket, and it's folks over time, to your point, that aren't necessarily the intended sort of recipients of this tax, right? So they have talked about the indexing the rate, and that's something that we've been on board with.
Thank you.
I would add that they think a high income earner is a nurse and a firefighter. So that's your high income earners, and it's always been that way. So look at the numbers like you've done, Ms. Pratt, but yeah, it's not really all high income earners. It's working families that are paying this.
Mayor Kaiser, quick.
Yeah, this goes out to Commissioner West, Commissioner Savas, and Adam Brown. You guys have done a lot of work in the past year and a half since we've got our homeless ordinance put in place. You guys need to watch the work that's being done behind you. First off, our city came to you and asked, Commissioner West, you brought up giving us money. Last February, it was approved by the Clackamas County Commissioners for the IGA between us and Canby for a mental health specialist. We're still waiting on that check. Number two, we have homeless people that have been put into apartment complexes with vouchers. The circle of service or the continuum of service that you've talked about, the resources, they're not getting it. They're not being held accountable. My police officers are getting called there daily to the point that, it'd almost be cheaper to put an office in the apartment complex to handle the situation. People are moving away. And now we're backtracking saying, okay, who do we need to contact? Is it Ant Farm, who's supposed to be the middle person? Not complaining at you guys. You have a lot on your plates, but watch the work you have done. So when you're going to Metro and talking about all the good you're doing, this doesn't come out, because I don't want to see your efforts go down in flames. That's all I have to say.
Mayor Kaiser, please find me offline and we'll look at those challenges and
okay,
we'll do a bit to mitigate them.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. So again, just to circle back with Commissioner West's piece and Mayor Buck, you and I were at the the Metro Mayors meeting the other day, and it sounds like all the Metro Mayors don't understand why Metro is doing this and are pushing back as hard as they can, and it seems to be falling on deaf ears. So those of you that are C4 reps, to you, please let your mayors know to, get on this letter, back it up. We can only do so much squeezing out of a rock. So this would be unfortunate to lose ground on some very serious work. So, okay.
Let me just close the dates early again. We have the big stakeholder thing tomorrow. I'll be at that. Metro holds a work session on January 16th. Metro will likely hold 2 public meetings on the draft ordinance, which could extend this tax for 20 years, and they could reduce the rate without going to the voters, change the governance model, and do all these things we don't want them to do. That's on January 23rd, and then the second meeting on the January 30th. They have to hit those deadlines because they have to get this worked up for the ballot in May on an off election year where most people won't be engaging. They want to get this on this spring. And so that's a whole nother controversy. So please pay attention. Mayors, cities, please help your county right now. We need your help to keep doing the good work we're doing.
Perfect. Great. Thank you all very much. Moving into state legislative updates and discussion. Trent, I'm sorry that we haven't left you with much time, sir.
Oh, no problem. I'll go as quick as I can, and then I'll answer however many questions you want me to answer for as late as you want me to. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. We are about to approach the state legislative session. It starts on January 21, and the first release of bills will happen tomorrow. So it is here. All right. But now I can't find there it is. As I was saying, here it goes. And it's a long session, so it goes until the end of June. June 29 is the last possible day that they can meet. And because it's a long session, we can expect anywhere between 2,500 and 3,000 bills, just a little bit of work, not too much. Here is your Clackamas County delegation. We have 19 members who represent Clackamas County at large. And so from any part of the geography of Clackamas County, including Senate District 29 down there, Todd Nash representing the rocks and trees of the eastern part of Clackamas County. So you'll see your representatives in here. And what's really cool about our delegation is many of them are in positions of leadership. And so we have actually a really great delegation, and I'm really proud of the work that they do. They're great. Here are some top priorities that you can expect to see at the state. Some of this is work that you do here at C4, and so there will be plenty of opportunities for conversation. Housing production, which has been a hot topic for a while and one that you'll talk about a lot. Homelessness, which we just talked about. Behavioral health and addictions will continue. Education funding will be top of mind. Wildfire funding, as you know, that the state just had a special session on backfilling some of the funds to address the previous year's wildfire. And so how that is funded is a big topic. And then, of course, the transportation package, which puts us on the road again. See what I did there? So there's been a lot of pre-session transportation package activities, and as you all saw, and as we worked on, right, the Joint Committee on Transportation did a statewide tour in 2024, 12 locations, including one stop here in Happy Valley. That was a pretty good trip. We toured the Sunrise Corridor. A lot of people showed up to testify and share their opinions about what to do, including some of our transit providers, as we've talked about. And then there have been 3 JCT work groups since the tour ended. And some of you have been monitoring that, and Commissioner Savas was even on one of them. The goals of those work groups were, what are the problems that we're trying to solve? And then, of course, how do we solve it, which is another way of saying how do we fund it? And here are the 3 groups. They covered back to basics, or O&M, which has been the hot topic of the Joint Committee on Transportation for the most part, trying to solve ODOT's funding gap, which they've been very clear about. There was a work group on transit and multimodal, and there was also a group on the House Bill 2017 commitments, which Commissioner Savas sat on behalf of AOC. And naturally, we were on there because one of those 2017 commitments was here in Clackamas County. It is the I-205 Improvements Project, or Bottleneck Project, as we like to call it. I will just say that many legislators like to call it the Abernathy Bridge Project, but we all here know that that is just one part of the whole project. The bottleneck is what y'all have been supporting the entire time. Here are some of the needs of your partners and some of you. So ODOT needs $1.8 billion per year for O&M. That's the gap that they have been communicating for pretty clearly and pretty consistently for the better part of 2024 and now into the new year. And they have been steady on that. They are not asking for new projects. They're not asking for any fluff beyond that. They want $1.8 billion to meet their O&M needs. And the governor has come in pretty strong and supported that as well. So that has the backing of the governor. She claimed and stated in her governor recommended budget that she does not want to lay off any ODOT employees and supports this request. Local needs, preserve 50-30-20, share of the state highway fund. And we have heard from so many legislators that that is not on the table. They will not support any changes to that. So your advocacy in 2024, I would say, has been very successful, because where it was a topic and still is a topic sometimes, I have not met a single legislator that is open to that yet. So we'll see. And of course, needs vary by local jurisdiction. Based on the state highway fund, some of you need operations and maintenance. Some of you need capital projects that have been punted to cover your operations and maintenance. Some of you need to pave things. Some of you just need to add other safety features or crosswalks to things that are paved really well. So I think what's tricky is ODOT has been very clear. They have an entire O&M problem, and they can sort of point to what their deficits are. It'll be really important for each of you to talk to your legislators about what the state highway fund does for you, and if an increase happens, how will you use it? And your local delegation members, they want to know what that is, because it's going to change jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Of course, there are regional priorities too, and so just looking at what JPACT has approved and what they're supporting for 2025, that is short and long-term funding solutions. So obviously the gas tax is going away. How do you solve that? That's the short version. The long version is, what do you do with something like electric vehicles, which are not paying, per mile or for a gasoline tax? So how do you solve that? Finish what we started in 2017 as a JPAC priority, which is another way of saying the House Bill 2017 commitments, including for JPAC at large, that would be 205 plus the Rose Quarter. Safe urban arterials and streets. That's another way of saying, 213 or 212 or 99. Those projects that bridge those bigger communities or bridge neighborhoods where we see a lot of traffic and congestion. Transit or transit options, and then of course resiliency. And then of course there's the lingering question of, if not tolling, then what? And that has been a question that has been sent to us. I don't know if it's necessarily ours to ask. It's a question the legislature is asking based on the governor's sort of position to pause tolling, and so that the legislature can look at it. And of course, we know that ODOT did their best to move it forward, and with your good advocacy, you were able to point out some of the flaws in what they were proposing, and that's what created the pause on tolling. But I want to be clear that it is a pause, and the legislature needs to grapple with what they will use instead of tolling if they want to fund 205. It's a big bill, and it's an outstanding bill, because that project is already under construction, and it's already, in that $700 to $800 million range for just the bridge at this point. So finding the dollars to do that on top of ODOT's $1.8 billion need, on top of a transit funding increase, we're talking about a pretty hefty transportation package. So I want to be clear that they are looking for money, and there's not a lot of options that exist in Oregon to do it. I want to flag one more thing that could start to come into the conversation before I go to this slide, which is an executive order from the governor that came out over the holidays. Great time to drop those, which is to require labor agreements for state-funded projects, or that's one way of saying it. Another way of saying it is state construction projects. So depending on the article you read or the executive order, they use those phrases interchangeably. If it was state construction projects, that might be a no prob Bob, okay situation. That's ODOT's problem. But if it's state-funded projects or projects that have state funding included in them, well, now that trickles into local projects, and that's where that could be an issue. There are, I'm sure, very understandable and good reasons to advocate for things like that, but it also makes projects more expensive. And so it's tricky to understand where that interest is coming from when we see that ODOT has a $1.8 billion a year budget deficit, and there are still policies that could make projects more expensive. So I think some more to be unpacked there, but I think we'll see local jurisdictions really struggle with that and maybe even oppose it if it turns into legislation. So in my opinion, there's more to learn about what that actually means or what the impacts will be. I know we have some assumptions about it, but I think there's more to unpack. So really the question for you is, how do you want to proceed? You have values and outcomes that you approved last year. And y'all did great work and a lot of collaboration over many months to work those together and come up with a solid, unified voice around what you want out of a transportation package, which I think is great because it communicated to legislators, you do want a transportation package. There is a need. There are things to do. So I thought that was great. But also your city approved it last year, and there's been an election since then. And so there might be a lingering question here of, is this something y'all need to take back to your councils to, get another thumbs up on? Do y'all want to? So those are logos. That's not a C4 letter. Those are logo letters. So is that something y'all want to, come back on and revisit in February, or use the time between now and February to re-support that sort of language? What kind of funding do you support? And I would say that you don't need to know that right now, but you need to be thinking about it as your legislators ask you, if I put my vote on this, do I have your backing? And then, of course, I'm happy to give you updates as they occur, but it would be helpful to me to learn from you. What do you want to hear from me in terms of the transportation package? So thank you for that. That is my quick presentation, and I will stop sharing.
Trent, you did great. I appreciate it. We're a minute over, or 2 minutes over, according to Apple time. Commissioner Savas, comments?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Thank you, Trent, for a very complete report there. One thing I will share as one of the members of that work group that I was hoping and anticipating, they had 2 other meetings scheduled. So suddenly in the December meeting, they announced that there's not going to be any more meetings, even though there'll be a brief, I think, a report next week coming out that's only an hour long. But these sessions were about 2 hours, 3 hours if needed. Anyhow, backing up. I don't feel that I ever got the mathematical understanding of what some of the funding proposals would amount to as far as funding their greater need. We didn't see the complete math, essentially. There was a lot of support for like a road user charge in lieu of tolling. So I think there was a lot of answers to the question. If not tolling, then there was a list of things that I think a lot of people seem to want to support. But mathematically, we don't know how that budgetarily is going to add up to how many users are out there, what that would generate exactly, and what kind of a dent would that make in funding, whether it's capital or whether it's O&M. So a lot to say that I didn't have enough information to really make a clean decision or to advise or support my colleagues on. So just want to just alert you to that. There needs to be more work done, but I still have a hard time absorbing that they're 1.8 billion short for just O&M. That's a lot of people, by the way. I don't dispute that they have a shortfall. I just wonder how they got to 1.8 so quickly. A year ago, it wasn't that big of money. That wasn't that much money. Now it's a huge amount. So I'll leave it there and give it back to you, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, do we have any other thoughts? I mean, obviously, Trent asked some very pointed questions of us here at the end of his presentation about, I think the values piece that we did work on, I think is a good roadmap for us if we do want to come back here at our February meeting to make sure that we formulate some key points to do. I know some of us are already making plans to attend Cities Day at the Capitol later this month. I know there's other opportunities as well to go talk to our legislators. And I know my council will want to talk about what funding pieces other than tolling we want to get behind, and what is that going to look like. What's thoughts from this group on next steps?
Mayor, I think Trent kind of alluded to it. I think the first step is at least the finished document we have, which was a value statement. If you could all review that, but Trent, maybe we don't, at least now, it might be a good idea to reaffirm that your new council or the council supports that, and that would be a help, right? I think that would help get the ball rolling, but there could be changes or a new introduction of some other method that we might want to come back and modify and update our value statement. But I think it'd be a great advantage to Trent, if I heard you correctly, at least reaffirm the value statement that you all approved last year.
You worked so hard on it. You already have some tight language that you got together. What I would recommend is taking it to your councils and say, do you want to keep your logo on here or not? And bring that back to us by the February meeting. And then you have something early in the session that you can work from. It's good and it's tight, but because so many people agree on it, it's a little vanilla, but it gets us in that, like, we are here to work together. We are here to have ideas and want to work with you. I think it's valuable in that regard that you do want a transportation package. So that would be my recommendation to do that. And of course, if y'all have additions to it, y'all can sort them out, any edits or whatever, at the February meeting. But you have something to work from, and I think that's a good quick document for you to lean on.
Thanks, Trent. Mayor Kaiser, you're our last comment or question.
Jamie, could you email us that letter again so it's still fresh? I know I'd have to go digging to find it, so we can maybe take it to our next council meetings.
I think
The
it's in your
values and
packet.
outcomes document.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
It's okay, but we can also email it to you and yours. Since we're asking for it, we can also email it to your city manager and you. And if you're not the mayor here, then we can also add your mayor so that it's top of mind.
Okay.
I would do all the above. That way the city manager can make sure it's on the agendas for those who are not here tonight as well. So.
Okay. All right. Everything else was handled earlier before Mayor Buck got on here. So if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Savas. I appreciate the second. All those in favor? Awesome.
Aye.
Everyone, it passes. Non-debatable motion. Have a great evening. Happy New Year. See everyone in February.